Full Point Method podcast. I got Mr. Water Ski Podcast himself, Matteo Luzzeri. What's up, dude? Coming from his new home in Italy. Yeah. You look good. Sound good.
Thanks.
Yeah, man. So we just did a little Instagram live, which I'm going to try to do before each one of these to get questions from you guys out there for what you want to hear from these guests. So we've got a couple questions here that we got from the Instagram live with Matteo a couple minutes ago. So we're going to address those questions specifically. But first, I asked Matteo what's kind of top of mind as far as what he's been thinking about, what he's been kind of interested in recently as it relates to water skiing. So Matteo, you started to talk about one of your buddies.
I think like one of the things that I've been really focusing on in the last year and a half, and that's actually something, if you remember, that we spoke about in the Q&A, in one of the Flow Point Method Q&As. What I've been really focusing on is my position in comparison to the boat, specifically when my bindings are at the ball. So my goal has become to have the boat within, reason, as far in front of me as I can. Right? So I want to make sure that as I turn the ball, I'm here, say me boat, as opposed to say here, right?
Yep.
And
that gets harder as the rope gets shorter.
Yeah, of course it's harder because you have to come up on the side of the boat more to be able to just get the ski out of the ball. Yep. But within that angle that the rope gives you, how can I be just a little bit further back to where if I make a mistake, the line tension will be there and I will be able to accelerate as soon as I need to.
Yep.
And it's been proven to be harder than I thought, because there are different ways of doing it. I think like Freddie Winter and Nate Smith are great at achieving that. And I would be super curious for you to have drone shots of the two of them to see if I'm right in my thinking. But they do it completely differently. Like they ski very differently. And so what I've been trying to do is to try to apply it to the way I ski, right? That's basically what I've been working on a lot. But I think even at longer lines, it helps. Like I told you before,
No, go ahead.
I've been working at it with skiers that are skiing, 32 miles per hour, 22 off, 28 off, where you're still skiing behind the boat. The rope is still not really short, but you do have to come up a little bit more and you lose connection with the boat as opposed to say 15 off. Yeah. And I'm trying to work with them on making sure that they don't spike the boat, that they don't find themselves shooting too far on the side of the boat, because then they delay. Well, their margin of error becomes really small. That's what I come to find out.
So I'm going to back up just briefly and identify one of the things I've told people for years. I wanted to tell people for years, get the message out that my ideal approach to course skiing is basically you're free skiing, but you're free skiing a rhythm that matches the buoys. That's how I ultimately would say the perfect pass is a pass where you're free skiing. You're not turning because the buoy's there. You're turning because the rhythm mandates it, the timing with position of you in the boat and your speed in relation to the boat and your direction in relation to the boat mandates that it's time to come back in behind the boat, but the buoy just happens to be there. So is it safe to say that this thing you just identified with Freddie and with Nate and probably some of the other best skiers in the world is potentially one of the key factors in skiing short line and even longer lines, where this is a critical move as well that isn't as easy to see because you're not as high on the boat? But is it safe to say that this is where the window or the margin for error becomes really small? Is that moment where you're at your widest point, your apex, and you're trying to get back behind the boat with a tight line and have the boat as far ahead of you as possible?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And now actually you verbalized what I've been trying to think about this whole year. Right? I want to ski. What I've been telling myself and my students here is I'm skiing in the course, but I'm skiing with the boat. If I am successful in running as many buoys as I want, is because I'm skiing well with the boat. The buoy is going to happen to be there where it needs to be. Right.
Yep.
And yeah, I think I don't know if the other pro skiers will verbalize it like that, but I certainly resonate with that idea. I think that if you are in a good rhythm with the boat, that's what allows you to run buoys. And it seems like almost it's the rule that you have to have your ski out of the ball to get buoys at the line that you want or the speed that you want. But there are, like we've all seen Nate sometimes making what appeared in relation to the ball a huge mistake. And yet he gets to run the pass or do 5 or, you know, because for as much as he looked off compared to the ball, he was in rhythm with the boat. And that's why you're still able to get more buoys, right? So I fully agree.
I have another question. Could it be said in relation to kind of this premise that we're making, that this is one of the choke points that delineates good skiing from great skiing, or anybody's good skiing from anybody's great skiing? In other words, at any level of amateur all the way up to pro, could it be said that we could probably both agree not everybody's going to nail this every time? And you just mentioned Nate doesn't nail it every time. Nobody's perfect. Nobody can get the right amount of swing into each buoy so that they just run out of speed when the buoy's there and they're ready to drop it back behind the boat. So could we then say that those who have figured out the most efficient and cleanest way to break, in other words, you mentioned it earlier, but I'm going to say it a different way. It's not just your relation into the boat relative to the boat. It's not just a matter of having the boat pulling away from you, but rather I would say it's reverse. It's the frame of reference you're using. It's your speed relative to the boat. So can you manage, if you come late and fast into a buoy like Nate has from time to time? We've seen it in the 4-ball 41. Nate's coming fast, and somehow he's able to kill his speed relative to the boat quicker and with less line load than anybody else in the world, turn the buoy and get a tight line on the backside of the buoy and accelerate and run the pass. So my question to you is, shouldn't we be also not just looking at getting the perfect rhythm and skiing that perfect line, which is what I've been purporting, but now I'm asking you, because I'm on this line of thinking for the last 2 years, maybe it's also something we should be talking about, the ability of the skier to manage their speed. And how do they do that? How do they manage their speed specifically into and out of apex so that they can, if they're offline, if they're off rhythm, they can get back on rhythm as quickly as possible when the boat is least pulling on them, such that when they want to accept the loads from the boat, they're ready and they're not going to spike the load. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I think personally, the reason why I've been focusing more on rhythm in relation to the boat, as opposed to my ability to slow down at will, is that because I've been focusing on that in the past, right? So, you know, what happens if I stay more over in this way? What happens if I decrease my intensity here, or I increase it here, or I use this different kind of setup on the ski? Am I allowed to shut the ski off at will and then accelerate also? Because that's the other point, right? Like you have to be able to accelerate after that. No, I think both of them are important. I just think personally, I had spent a long time focusing on that, neglecting this other aspect. You see? But certainly you have to be, and I know that you talk a lot about, stance, and I fully agree. That's one of the things that allows you to control the speed of your ski better when you need to, right? Because we have all had those passes where you have a great gait, everything is sort of flowing, and provided you don't do major mistakes, you kind of get at the end of it and you're happy. The problem is when they don't start well and you need to run the pass anyway, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's where your stance and how you position yourself on the ski allows you to control more your speed when you need to. Maybe you need to get off a buoy quick, because you're a little bit off balance, or a little bit of rhythm.
I have more in the recent history. I've been recent past. I've been thinking more in terms of what you just said. Like, how do you teach skiers how to cope with a mistake and how to get back on rhythm? Because so much, myself included, so much of the narrative in our sport has been, in my opinion, get the perfect start. You start the rhythm right, It's easy to run the pass. And I'm not downplaying that, because as you mentioned, that's the ultimate. The ultimate is starting with a rhythm, continuing that rhythm all the way through 6 turns. That's the ultimate. What I'm saying is, holy shit, things don't always go as planned. Let's build some tools that allow a skier to kill speed when they need to. And I think I figured it out. I don't want to get into it too much here, because we're talking specifically, we got other questions to get to, but I do think I know what Freddie and Nate are doing. And I think they're more efficient at killing speed when the boat's not looking at them. And what I mean by looking is when the boat isn't pulling on them than anybody else.
Well,
and I think they're doing that by, so in the past, I'll just lay out the easy premise. In the past, we've been talking about carving back to the wakes, or we used to always talk about the goal should be skiing back to the wakes as far as you can before the boat pulls on you. So that was like 2000, early mid 2000s. It was like the most efficient skiers are the ones who can hide from the boat, carve back to the wakes as far as possible before the boat picks them up. And I think a lot of people are skiing at longer ropes, especially, are kind of skiing with that in mind, like ride the ski, keep your body forward, or keep your mass centered, engage the shovel, the ski pulls underneath you and pulls you back to center line. The problem, like you mentioned, is that I would say 38 off and shorter, where you have to get so high on the boat to get your feet around the buoy, you don't have time to let the ski carve back to center line. And this was on ball spray, but I think it's smearing, skidding, drifting, whatever you want to call it, the move to not only kill speed, but to get the rope tight as wide as possible, which is what Nate and Freddie are doing, and have as much tight rope as possible to get back to center line, is being able to drift the tail of the ski relative to your center mass. And I think Nate, if you look at Nate, he comes in the buoy often at 41 off with his handle down by his knees, which allows him to get his mass more forward than everybody else. And then when he wants to, he just loads through the back foot, gets the tail to break free without falling off the back of the ski mostly. And then when the rope comes tight, he's already landing back over his feet evenly. And so the boat never feels him do that move. I think that's the part B. I think what you're talking about is part A, establishing the mindset that you can ski a perfect rhythm and it will match the buoys, and maintaining that rhythm, finding the keys for you personally that will help you ski that rhythm. I think part B is when, like Mike Tyson said, you have part A and you have your plan, but then you get punched in the face. Part B is like, okay, what am I going to do? I've got to be able to scrub speed and get the rope tight as soon as possible without spiking the load. So you scrub speed by smearing the tail. This happens at 38 off and shorter. However, I've tried it at 28 off and it feels phenomenal. So anybody at any line, like 15 off, you can learn to do this, but it's in its simplest terms, it's a forward to backward move. Just like you would on snow, you snow ski. When you get to the bottom hill, you drift your ski sideways to spray your buddy or spray your dad, or, you know, spray some random stranger. It's that same move. You're basically scrubbing speed, but you got to get that move done and then land back over a trimmed out ski before the rope comes tight.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm going to try tomorrow. I think, you know, the weather is supposed to be nice. What I can tell you though is I like your way of thinking, because that's kind of one of the things that my coach opened my mind to this summer. You know, like I was really working on the perfect pull out. You know, I always wanted to be there in the right angle for the gait that I like to do, blah, blah, blah. And then I would ski and he would ask me, you know, how do you feel? I'm like, the pull out was bad. The pull out was bad. And what he told me was deal with it. You know, told me it doesn't matter, you know, like figure out how you have to change your intensity and your turn according to where you are. But yes, keep working on having a good pull out with a good speed, good control. But if it doesn't happen, also learn how to deal with it and still have a good swing into one, you know?
Yep.
So it's in a different part of the course, but I have been thinking lately of like, okay, it wasn't, and mentally makes perfect sense. You know, it's too fast of a sport, as Will would argue, to even think. But let's assume that we can think about one thing. It should always be something in front of us, not something that we did before.
Exactly. Exactly.
With Keith Albritton, my ski partner, when I was in Tallahassee, I would always, because he fell prey of like thinking back about the gate while he was at 2 or 3, and then, that doesn't end up well. I would always tell him to ski forward, to ski for the next, to ski forward, like worry about what's coming. You had a shitty one, continue to look at 2 and 3 and continue to ski, one is past. So in a way, I've been reminded by my coach that the gate is the same. And I like how you're trying to almost prepare for that, right? Like you don't want it, but if it happens, what is your toolbox? What can you do to still be able to scrap a pass?